In this video, you'll learn how to create your own ride-sharing app just like Uber without writing a single line of code using a tool called Bubble. Using Bubble's no-code tool, we'll explain how to recreate all of the key features inside of your Uber clone. From setting up your own custom database, to designing the actual user interface, to then stitching everything together using workflows so your app can become functional, this course is going to cover absolutely everything you need to know. Look, there is just so much that we need to cover, so I'm going to hand this one over to Matt, and he's going to get you up to speed as quickly as possible.
So in this section, we are going to lay the foundation for our app. And the best way to do this is to thoroughly plan your database beforehand, as well as making sure we have our option sets and the specific values. So the first thing we're going to go do is create these data types, these option sets. And if you need to refer back to them later, you can look in the Notion template, which will have the pages that we'll need, as well as the different types, as well as the option sets. Hey guys, so today we are going to learn how to build an Uber clone using the Bubble native mobile editor. And we're going to go through a whole checklist of things like creating the different data types in the database, then creating some option sets that then go with that, as well as go through all these different pages, the different styles you're going to need, how to implement them, make sure they're responsive, and then go through a list of features that will enable you to create an interface for a user trying to request a ride, a driver that would then receive the rides, and as well as an admin page to accept your drivers and kind of put a workforce into action. Okay, so we're going to go through some things like setting up the different user pages, a bit of design, and then ultimately we'll create an actual ride page itself where you will be able to go and book a trip and get the pricing, as well as create accounts and whatnot. Okay, so we're going to start off by creating the database. So we're going to go all the way back to our new project. We're going to create a project called Uber Mobile Clone, and we're just going to start with the mobile app, and just going to start with the basic features. Cool, so now we get to our home page. But before we go in and do any design, we are going to create the database types and the option sets. So we're going to go over to the left and to our data tab. And you can see we already have two types, which is device and user. We're going to do some edits to the user, but device we can leave for now. So let's go over to our Notion page again, and let's look for the first data type. So this is going to be in our user. And the first thing we're going to need to do is add a name and email. So let's go close these tabs here. Go to our user, and we need to add name. This is going to be type text. Cool. Let's quickly get a couple. Email, which will already be added as a built-in type. We're going to do add phone. User type is an option set, profile picture. So let's add the phone number, and this is going to be a number. And we also need to add in a profile picture. This is going to be type image. User type, we're going to need to create an option set first. So we're going to go over to our tab here, to the top right, option sets. We can say skip this tutorial. And here we're going to go to new option set, and we say user type. We create. Then this user type is going to be either admin, driver, or rider. So we can create admin, create, say rider, brackets user, and then the last one is driver. Cool, so now we have this option set created. So let's go back to our data types, and we're going to create a new one. This is going to be user type, which will be this option set over here, which is user type. Go create. Cool. So we have our profile photo. Now we're going to add in current location. Current location. And this is going to be an address type. So we're going to go create. Now we're going to come back to this in a bit, where we'll need to go and get Google Cloud API keys to be able to use the map functionality. But we'll get back to that now once we've finished creating our database. Cool. Then we have rating, which will be a number. So vehicle, we are going to relate to another data type, and then active trip, we're also going to relate to another data type. So we'll come back to these in 2 seconds. Now we can go and create the driver. As you can see, we will relate these ones back. So let's create driver. In driver, we're going to need the user type, which will relate back. So this is going to be driver, and this type will be user. Then this is going to be more stuff for the actual vehicle itself, which will be the make, model, your plate number, color, photo, and then approved we're going to use for the admin side. So when the admin gets a new request, they can either approve or deny the driver to be active on the platform. So let's go back here and say this will be the car make, which will be text. Then the car model, which will also be text. Then what else do we need to add? We need to add year, plate number, and color. So year, which will be a number, number plates, which will be text, and color, which will also be text. Perfect. Okay. So then our last one, we have approved. Photo we can add in if you want the user to take a photo of the car and then upload that in the application, but we're just going to leave that for now. So we're going to go and add in approved. So this approved will be a type yes or no. So create, and then now before we go to the next type, we need to look over here for approved yes, no, and then the default we're going to set to no. So that is our driver type. Now we can go back to our user fields and we can link this type here. So we're going to copy vehicle, which is for drivers, in our user type. We're just going to say vehicle for drivers as the name, and then we're going to relate this back to driver. So what we can do here for drivers, we can add an identifier, which is also vehicle. We could actually say driver's vehicle. So just to double check there, we have this user type, and inside this user type we can have vehicle for drivers, which is driver's vehicle. Now we haven't created this type yet, so we are going to create that now, which is the ride request / trip. So we're going to go to a new type, say ride request / trip, and we create that. Let's go look at our types. So now inside this is where the user and the rider will kind of meet together in the system, as in the user will request a ride, the driver will then accept it, and then this is where all that information gets passed to both sides. So the first one we need to do is add in a rider for the trip, which is going to be a user. Then we're also going to add in the driver for the trip, which will be a user as well. Then we're going to need the specific information for that trip, which is the pickup address and the drop-off address. So we're going to add in the pickup address, which is an address, geographic address, and then we're going to need the drop-off address, which is also a geographic address. So now we have the driver, the user, and the pickup point and the drop-off point. Now we need to do the status. So you know when you are on Uber, you can request a trip and it will tell you it's requested. Then once you find a driver, it's accepted or in progress and the likes. So we're going to add in status, but this is actually an option set. So if we try and find our option set here, it's not going to be there. So we're going to cancel. We need to go add a new option set, and this option set will be status. So we go to status. And let's scroll down to our option set list over here. And here we can see we have our 4 options. So the first one is requested. So accepted, completed, and canceled. Awesome. So now we have our 4 statuses for the trip. So we can go back to our data type and we're going to go to the ride requests and trip. And we're going to type status. Now we're going to look for our option set, which is status. There we go. And we're going to click create. So let's scroll back up to our data type here. So now we've just added our status data types for there. Now we need to add price or fare. So this would be how much the specific trip will cost. So this is going to be a number. Let's add one more identifier here, which will be fare. We say create. Then we're going to have our ride rating and our driver rating. Okay, so go here, rider rating, and it's going to be a number. So this rider rating, because we are going to need to set it earlier, we're going to say rider rating given. This will just be an identifier for later when we need to align where that number is going, if we're giving it to the driver or to the rider and vice versa. So we have our rider rating given, and then now we need to add our driver rating given, and this is also going to be a number. We go create. So now that we've created our ride request / trip, we need to go back up to our user type, and we're going to add in one more thing called an active trip. So on the left, we're going to go down to user, and we're going to go create new type. This will be active trip, and here we're just going to type in trip, and we're going to find this ride request trip, that type we just added, and we're going to go create. Okay, so now we have our user database done, our driver and vehicle database, and also our ride request types. So now one of the important things is you need to be able to get money for the trip to be able to pay the driver as well as the company. So we need to add in our payment methods, and you can see we have an option set here as well. So we're going to go over option sets, and we're going to add in a new type. Let's actually update this. We say payment status. So the new type will be payment status. We'll go create, and then here we have pending, paid, and failed. So we say pending, paid, and failed. So let's go back to our checklist here and create this payment type. So we're going to type payment in the bottom left, new type, click create, and then here we're going to have our trip, which we're going to relate back to our trip type. So it'll pull the data from that to be able to associate for that specific payment. Then the amount, which will also be related to the price or fare. And this for here, just for this record though, it's going to be a number. Then our payment status, which is the item we just added our option sets, payment status, and that is going to be the option set payment status. And then our last one is going to be payment method. And this one we can also just add as a type text. We could go and create a option set for this, but for this one we're just going to keep it simple, as a lot of the payment integrations all have their own kind of settings that you can link with and use easily. So this would be something like card or cash. Cool. So now we need to go and create our rating. So we go to the left, we can type rating, create, then we need to add the trip, which relates back to that request type. So we're going to type in here trip, and this is going to be the ride request / trip. We're going to create, let's go back, and we're going to find the specific riders and link drivers for here, scores, and then the reviews. So we're going to go linked driver, and that's going to be type user. Create, let me say linked rider, which is also going to be type user. Then we need to add in the score as well as the review. So the score, which will be like the rating, the score rating, and this is going to be type number. Then the review, which will be the actual content of the review, is going to be type text. And then the last field here, okay, so this will be for additional comments. So we have created now our rating type. Now we're going to add in this extra feature for when you're on a trip, or let's say you make a request, then you need to try and figure out exactly where the car is or where it's parked, and you need to be able to message the driver, or the driver needs to be able to message you back so you guys could meet, or if there's a problem, etc. So we need to also create this message type. We're going to call this chat / message. Okay, create, and then here we have the trip that it needs to be associated to. So we want to make sure that you can only send messages whilst you're on an active trip and not have direct access to that driver. And then we're going to also have sender, receiver, and then the message content. So the first thing we're going to do is add trip, which will be, you can type trip here, request, ride request / trip, and our other types are sender, receiver. So actually we're just going to use the sender, but we can actually just pull the created by. So sender we're going to leave as now for optional. Sender, which is optional, and it's going to be user type. And then the last one is the actual content or context of the message. So I'm just going to call this message content. And this is going to be type text. Cool. So let's double check through our items here. We've gone and created our user, which has all our different types. This one's relating to request type. Driver vehicle relates to the actual driver's vehicle. Cool. So we have those. Then our actual ride or our request, we have created over here, back with some links to geographic addresses. And then payment, we've also got our payment status, which pulls the option set and relates back to a trip, which is what the user requests. And then our rating and our messages, which we just created. So we have all our rating, linked driver, which will relate to a user and also to a rider. And then our last one, which was these chat messages, which relates to trip itself and then has the message content. Okay, so now we've created all the data types that we need. Let's quickly go and look at our option sets. So we're going to scroll down here. So we have car and trip type, rating, status, and user type. So let's see what we have. We have payment status, status, user type. So what we need to actually do, I need to add in quickly payment status and failed, paid, and pending. Okay, so we have our payment status, our user type, and our ride status. Now we need to add in rating and then also the car type. So the car or trip type, this will relate to car or trip type. Car or trip type pretty much means where you have different options like your Uber X or Uber XL or your Uber Black. So we need to do this so we can display those specific types that we have available, as well as also calculate the pricing for each. So for this one, we're just going to use two options, which will be Uber X, and we can create, and then we can say Uber XL, which we can create. Now we're going to do two more steps here on this. So this will create an option set that we will reference, but now we also need to add some further attributes to that. And that is going to be a price multiplier. So we're going to go over here and it says create a new attribute. And this we're going to call the price multiplier. And this is going to be a number. Okay, so now we have that price multiplier. And now we're going to go to UberX and we're going to say modify attributes. And you can see it gives us the display name. And now we're going to add a price multiplier. So this would be for you if you have a standard rate to charge over, let's say, a kilometer value. So let's say we have a 10-kilometer trip. We don't want it to be $10 for that trip. We want to have a multiplier that prices it accordingly. So the multiplier for our UberX, we're going to set at 20. All right, so look, if we click modify on UberX again, we have that price multiple of 20. Now on UberX, we're going to go here and we're going to say the price multiplier for UberXL is 30. So now we have our price multipliers for each of these, meaning that it will gauge the pricing. But we will get into building out that functionality in the next couple of videos. All right, and then over here, we're going to have ratings. Instead of adding dynamic ratings, we're just going to keep it simple for now and add in a rating type, which we will implement later. And here we're just going to say 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Now this is going to have two attributes, and we're just going to set these as fixed values for now. So we need to create these values here, which is going to be the comment, and that is going to be type text. And then this is going to be the score rating, and this is going to be a number. Okay, so now we have our attributes created, and now we need to go to our actual options and then add in their values. So if a user wants to give a rating of 1, the display will show the user 1, the comment will be bad, and the score rating will be 1. So here you can use it to use your different multiples. If you, let's say, are calculating a percentage, you'd then give it ratings out of 100, which then converts a lot easier. Cool, so let's go to number 2. The comment we're going to say here is average score rating is 2, 3. We're going to say the comment is not too bad, and that score rating is going to be 3. And for 4, the comment is going to be good, score rating 4. And for the last one, 5, which would be great, and this is going to be a score rating of 5. Okay, so now we have all the option sets we're going to need to be able to implement this app, as well as all of the different data types and their setup. So now we're going to go into building out some of the page functionality, and then we're going to get into the actual building of some workflows. In this first section, we are going to look at the start of designing our app, and what we're going to do is go through creating the sign in and sign up pages. And with that, we're going to go through some of the workflow elements, as well as signing up the different user types. And this will be the user, driver, and we're also going to create a separate admin flow. So now in this session, we are going to start creating some of the pages, as well as some of the functionality for the app. Now we're going to start off by creating our sign up and sign in pages, as well as this home page. So we're going to create some functionality to register accounts, and then we'll slowly get to redirecting to the settings page, as well as setting up the settings page. Okay, so here we're going to have our home page. This is essentially going to be something like this, where a user will land for the first time, and then they can either choose to sign up or sign in. And here we're going to add in some functionality for specific signups for riders or for drivers. So we have our blank page here, which will start you off on home. So first thing is we're going to add a group. We're going to add in a group, and then on the left we're going to type image, and we're going to add in an image here. And here we can keep that as a fixed ratio, or we can set the specific heights. So for this, we're not going to set a specific height. And this group over here, we are going to add in an image. So we're going to go to our image here on the left, click upload. Now you can go and find your different items you want to add in. And for this front page, we're just going to use this Uber icon. And you can see that it goes in quite big into the page. So we can actually go here and then set the specific items here. So let's actually keep this as the fixed ratio. And then the width, we're going to say max. Let's add a max width of maybe, let's do 150. Maybe still a bit too big still, so let's go 120. Cool. So you can see that it slides all the way to the left. So we're going to click on the image, and we're just going to bring it to the center, and we still have this group above. So we're going to create all the items for functionality, and then we're going to make sure that it's all responsive, and then go through the different views from the different phone types to make sure that it all fits. Okay, so we'll have our icon at the top. Now we're going to add in another group, and this group we're going to actually start by making the background black. So over here we're going to go to fit height to content. We click on this element, and we're going to say no. So it gives it almost the full width, and it will expand to the full width of the page. So let's go here. We're going to go to its appearance, and we're going to click on this thing over here that says define each border independently. So now what we're going to do is we're going to set this top style, border style top, and we're going to go 20. So you can see that it gives it a small curve on the edge, and what we're going to do is we're going to change that to 100. Okay, so let's actually change this black to a little bit darker. All right. Okay, so now we can set this for a specific height. So let's go and add this as min height is 80, and we can say 120 there, or we can actually just use a percentage value. So we can try 20%. Let's add this. Click on the container of that image, and we're going to say middle. Cool. So now we have a basic area over here. Now inside this box, we're going to find another group, and we're going to add it into this box. Now you can see that it still overlays on the top, so we need to add in either some margin on the top, or we can actually just go and add in some other items below and come back to that later. Now what we want to do, remember we're trying to get this to fit here, and then with the rider and the driver button. So we can actually click on this main element. We're going to go to this container alignment to centered. You can see that now these blocks shift down into the middle. We're just going to give these some different colors now so we can work with them and still see them. Okay, But now you can also see that it's pushing all the way to the edge of the page. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to this group B, we're going to go to layout, and then in the padding area, we're going to add 20 pixels of left padding and 20 pixels of right padding. Perfect. And the last thing that we're going to add in here is some text. Cool. So now the text color we can change so we can be able to see that. And now this we're just going to type Uber, and we definitely need to make that a bit bigger. So we go to the app or the text style there. We're going to make that 36, and we're going to go to this over here to give it a bit more of a bold look. I think we could probably make that style, let's call it 50 pixels, and we're going to center that. Cool. And now actually instead of using the centered, we're going to use this different item over here, and we can see these different items like this. But we're not going to use the space between, we're going to use the space around. So now we are going to look for this group over here. We go to the left, and we're actually going to drag it inside of this group. So now we're going to add some text into this group D, and we're just going to say that is rider. And now we're going to click on this group D again. We go Control C, Control V, and now we are going to see this area. We're going to say driver. So we can give this item over here a bit more spacing, and what we're going to do for that is we're going to apply gap spacing between the elements. So we go to this item here, to the container, to its main container parent, and we're going to click on layout, then go to apply gap and spacing between elements. And here we can put, let's say, 30 pixels in between. Let's actually go to each one of these ones now, and we are going to take away the back color of this and take away the back color of that, and let's make this a little bit bigger. We'll make it 24 pixels, and we're going to change the weight to 500. Do the same here, 24 and 500. And what we're going to do is now we have our basic layout. Now instead of adding groups there, what we can actually do is add buttons. So we're going to drag a button into this area. And I'm just going to go to this text, we're going to copy, and we're going to go to the label, we're going to type ride, we're going to select Control C, go down to this bottom group, and we're going to click driver, we can copy the name there, and paste. Okay, so now we can delete these text elements over there. So now you can see we have our two buttons for rider and driver. So we're going to click on the container element again, and we're going to say no background, and there you go. But now you can see it's still a blue. So let's update that to gray, and then we need to make sure that the actual text is visible. So we're going to change that to black. And the last thing we're going to do is scroll a little bit down to where you see border style, and we're going to add 10 pixels of roundness. Okay, and we go down to driver, the background style, we're going to make that grayish color, and the font color we're going to change to black. Go down to the borders all styling, and we're going to give that 10 pixels. Okay. So now you can see we have our basic layout for this front page. But now what we can do is we can either go to our responsive tab, or you can preview and do the same. But then here we can now look at our different phone sizings. So we're going to go to this responsive tab to where you can see the phone name. And we're going to click there and click this pencil. Now you can see all these different types of phones, like the Galaxies also have quite big screens, so it's generally a lot easier to fit items there. But you start to run into issues when you get to things like the iPhone 8 and the iPhone SE. So it looks okay. All the items are fitting in because of the specific styling choices we made. But what we want to do here is make sure that there's always that white spacing between the icon and the rest of the body. So we're just going to add some spacing there, 20 margin on the top and 20 margin on the bottom. And that gives it a much better look. So let's go preview on some other items. On this, still working on the 15 Pro Max. Perfect. Works on the Pixel. And let's look at the Galaxy. Perfect. And just our two small resolution screens, which is the iPhone SE. That works well. And then the iPhone 8. Perfect. So now what we're going to do here is we're going to use these buttons to take you into a specific login flow. So now what we need to do is go and create the sign in page and the sign up page. So let's go to the top left and we're going to go over here and say create new page, new mobile view. And this is going to be sign in, and we can actually duplicate it from this home page, and we can say create. I think one thing we do need to go and change is this is meant to be not scrollable. And let's quickly go back to our home page, and we're going to click on the home icon and we say not scrollable. Let's just double check one more time that it can still render on the iPhone SE. Perfect. Okay, so let's go back to our sign-in page. And now here we can, depending on what information you need to get from the user, we can just delete this item there. And we're going to keep the actual container itself. We can delete the sub-elements. Let's make that a different color. And now for the sign-in page, the things we're going to need is either the email, username, or a phone number, and the user's password, and then we need to add in a button to start the process. So what we can add here is a text element, and this one we're going to say, which will be email, and then underneath that we are going to add an input. So we drag an input there, and we need to make sure that these are white color text. So we click on the text, font color, we're going to make white. This input, we are also going to make sure that our placeholder has a bit of a darker gray. The borders we can keep as white, and the background style we're going to change to white. And then with our app styling, we're going to make sure that it's 10% or 10 pixel of roundness. So over here, we're going to go to the container element on the left, and we're going to say none. So you can see we have an email input. So we're going to go to this input itself, and we're going to call this input email. And the content format we need to change to an email. So now we have that there, and then we can say demo into the placeholder. You can say demo@email.com. So now we have our email input. So now what we can do here is we can either copy this element to make sure that there's spacing between, or if we want to keep it all centered in the same place, we can pretty much just duplicate it within that group. So we can go Control C on this email text, and then Control V. We go to the layout, click next, and that will push it below. And then on this input email, we can go again, Control C, Control V, click on the bottom one, go to layout, and click next again. Now we don't want two emails here. We want an email and then a password. So we're going to type password, and over here, we're going to click on that input. We're going to change its name to input password, and into here, we're just going to put some stars that represent a hidden password, and then the content format we're going to change to password. Okay, so this is where our basic sign-in flow would go, but we also need to add in either some information telling you where you are in the app. So what we're going to do is we need to make sure that this item is firstly scrollable back to the previous page and also has some context as to where you are in the app. So we're not going to include it as a tab item, but we are going to show the top app bar. Now it looks a little bit funny here, but we can go and preview, and you can see that it says home and it has that top app bar. But we need to go and click here, and we're going to change the view title. So we click on the sign in page, the view title, we're going to change that to sign in, and there you go. So now the last thing we need to add in here is a button below, and this is going to be the sign in. Cool. So we now have the ability to go through and add these items. I think what we should do though is add another group, and we're going to drag that here, and we're going to drag this sign in button into that group, and we're going to add some text into that group below the sign in button as well. We're going to go to its font color, change it to white, and now the item we add here is going to say don't have an account, sign up, question mark. So if someone by chance clicked the wrong sign in button, then we are going to give them the chance to go to sign up. So we're going to say don't have an account, question mark, sign up. And the last thing we're going to do here is go to this rich text editor, click here, we're going to highlight the sign up area, we're going to click bold, so that just gives it a little bit more of a standout area. We're going to say center the text and push to the middle. Okay, so let's go and update this button. The background color we are going to make a gray, so we can find a gray over here, and then the text we are going to make black. Okay, so now we have these basic items here, and we are going to quickly preview that. So you can see we have this item here, which gets a little bit in the way, and we still need to add in some other elements. So let's have a look here. So it's on iPhone 8, but if we're on iPhone 14, it works well. So we just need to keep this in mind when designing our mobile apps, as we need to make sure that the design accounts for different phone sizes and responsiveness. So what we're going to do is we're actually going to remove this top item, and now we have this whole page of space. And you can remove that there, but it gives it a nice visual touch. What we can do is go to this top item, and we can remove this bottom border. So it almost flows in directly and gives this back button a bit of spacing. Okay, so as you can remember in our previous page, we had this item here for rider and for driver. So we want separate sign-in flows for each of these different user types. So what we're going to do is we're going to go back to our sign-in page. We're going to click on the main sign-in page, and we're going to look here where it says add a new property. So we're going to add a new property, and we're going to call this user type. This user type is going to be a dynamic value, and the field type is one of those option sets that we created earlier called user type. We're going to go to optional, and we are not going to make this optional because it's a required field to be able to continue with the sign-in flow. So we're going to click add. You can see there we now have a user type. So let's quickly go look at our option sets under our user types. And our user types are rider, driver, and admin. So what we're going to add in here is another text element into this page area. And we're going to change the font color. And here we're going to say that it is the sign-in, but we're going to add in some dynamic data. So we're going to look over here, we're going to type sign, and we're going to look for sign in. This is pretty much the page name. So whatever you named your page, you'll be able to find it there. And we're going to sign in user types display, and then the words sign in. So essentially what that is doing is it's taking the value that we just set for the page, which we did here, this user type, and it's going to show that specific user type's display before that sign. So essentially it takes this option set, it will say this item's display, which is driver, and it'll say driver sign in, and then have the email and password. So if we display now, it's not going to show because we haven't actually set the state with a value. So it's just going to say sign in. And let's go back to our home page. And now we're going to create the functionality for these flows to push into the sign-in page. So we're going to go add workflow. We say go to a view, and that view is going to be sign in. Now you can see it asks us for a specific user type. So let's go and look at which button we have here, which was rider. So we're going to say go to view sign in, and this is going to have a drop down here. We can choose rider. Okay. Now we can click on the driver button, we go add workflow, we're going to say go to view, and this is also going to take us to sign in, but now this is the driver button, so we're going to set driver. So let's go demo that and see how that displays on our page. So we're going to change our phone type just for a bit of spacing, and we're going to click rider, and you can see it takes us to this page over here. So let's go quickly adjust. It says rider user sign in. Let's go adjust our option set, and we're just going to call it rider. And now we can refresh this page. Let's go look again. You see, look, it changes the name to rider. But now we have our rider sign in, and we have sign in here. So we don't really need both. So what we can do is we go back to our sign in page. We're going to go to this top here. We have the back button, and also what we can do is remove the actual page name. So the view title, we can just leave empty. And then, hold on, if we leave that view title empty, we have this function here where it has our login, and we can click go back to home. Or if we go to driver, we have our driver sign in and go back to home. Okay, so now we've created the flow from our home page into our sign in page. Now we need to create the actual workflow for that page. So we have our input email and our input password. We go sign in, go add workflow, and this we're going to say log the user in. Email is going to be input email, the value. Password is going to be input passwords value, and that will essentially log the user in. What we would have to do after this is we would take the user and we're going to not take them to a view, we would go to a tab. But since we haven't created those pages yet, we can't do the navigation until we have created them. So we're going to finish creating our sign up and login flow. So we have our sign up all done. We have our sign in all done, and now we need to go and create the actual sign up page. So what we're going to do is go to the top left, go new mobile view, and we're going to call this sign up. We're going to copy from this existing sign in view, so it's not scrollable. We're going to go create, and then over here, all we actually need to do for our sign up workflow is add one more item. So we're just going to go Control C, Control V on this email, and on input, Control C, Control V, and here we are going to go previous. Here we're just going to ask for the user's name, and we click on this input, and this we're going to change to text, and the name demo will put as the placeholder. Okay, so now what we need to also do over here is, because this isn't the sign up page, because it isn't the sign in page, we're going to put sign up at the top. And because we cloned that previous page, we still have this user type set into the properties. So if you created a new page and went and replicated this, you would need to go and re-add that property to the page to be able to run the flow. Okay, so we have our heading, we have the name input, and now we need to edit this button. This button will be for sign up. And then at the bottom here, this is going to be for sign in. So we say, instead of saying don't have an account, we're going to say already have an account, sign in. So now our visual display is all created. Now we need to go and do the workflow for sign up. So I'm actually going to delete these items here, and we're going to do this from scratch. So essentially we're going to take the name, the email, and the password, and we're going to sign the user up. So we'll go edit workflow, and this one we're going to say sign the user up. Then for email, we're going to say input emails value, password, we'll say input passwords value. And now below here, we've got the two fields, but we need to add in the user's name as well. So we can change the name, and we're going to go to change another field, and this relates to the specific user type. So we're going to add in their name, and that will be input. So we still haven't renamed that to input email. So let's go back here. We're going to call this input name. Go back to our workflow tab, input name, we're going to type input names value. So now that will sign the user up, update their name. But there's another field that we also need to add here, and that is the user's phone number. So we can add it here, but now we need to go back to our front, and we need to go Control C on that one, Control C, Control V, click on the text, go next, and then on this item over here, we're going to say phone number, and click back here. We're going to say 082 1 2 3 4 5 6 7. This we're going to change to a number, text, numbers only, and now we just need to go and update our sign up flow. So here, we need to be able to identify that. So we're going to call that input phone number, and go back to workflow, and we're going to change this to input phone numbers value. Okay, let's go have a look. So I think as our phone number in our user types is set as a number, we need to actually convert that number, text number, into a number. So you can see here, phone number is a number type. So input phone numbers value, and we're going to type converted to number. Perfect. So there you go. Now that would sign the user. So we still need to go and send them to a specific place, and that we're going to use go to tab, but we haven't created those pages just yet. We'll get to that in the next section. All right, so now we have our basic sign-ins done, and now we need to go and look at these items at the bottom, which we're actually going to add in a workflow to, which will be go to a view, because we're on the sign-in page or sign-up page, and this says already have an account, sign in. So we edit that. We're going to go to a view, and this is going to be sign in. You can see that it asks us for that user type value. So here we need to make sure that we use the specific user type value that we started the flow with. So what we're going to do is we're going to look for our page name over here. We're going to say sign ups value, and we're going to use its user type. And that will essentially mean that when you click the user type, it will dynamically flow between the pages, and you don't need to set it manually every time. So now we have our sign up page done and our sign in. Let's go back. Don't have an account, sign up, add workflow. I'm going to say go to a view. Target view is going to be sign up. And remember the user type, we're going to look for our page name. I'm going to say sign in. So that's pulling the page and the page properties, and we're going to pull that user type. So now we have our basic sign in and sign up flows done. So let's go and test it from the home page. Okay, so we're going to test it on, you can see it's working on the bigger phones, but let's stay testing on the SE because this is the smallest phone. And if it's responsive here, it's most likely going to be responsive on the bigger devices as well. So let's go have a look. Rider, you see Rider sign in, demo email, password, and then we'll click sign in. Let's see if I click here, don't have an account, sign up. Okay, so then we can see that we have this item, but as you can see, the styling is not too great, so we'll go edit that in a bit. So I'm going to click back, and let's go look for driver and see that works. Let's go to sign up. Same issue for the driver sign up, where we have kind of a lack of spacing. So what we can do there is go to our sign up page. We can actually reduce the size of some of these elements. So this text is fitting to its content, but it also has a minimum height of 44. So what we're going to do is change that to 30, and you can see it drops it a bit. We're going to go to the phone number. We're going to drop that to 30, drop this to 30, and drop this to 30. Now, it doesn't have as much spacing as we would like, so we can try and add some smaller spacing in here, which gives it a bit of spacing between each element, and then just bring down the height of these boxes to 40 each, where it still looks decently sized, but has a lot more space around the elements. So let's give that a preview, and you can see it gives us a lot more space and still looks decently well there. So you can go and remove things like this, add in your different style variants, but for now, we've got it to work well on each side. Okay, so that's creating the homepage and the sign-in flows. And now we're going to go in the next section, create the specific settings page, dashboards, and trips. And from there, we'll also go and update these specific go-to views on our sign-in pages. So you can see we have some errors here, which we will get to in the next section. In this section, we are going to look at creating a settings page. Now, this page is going to be shared by both the driver and the user. And what we're going to be able to do here is add things like your profile picture, your display name, and some other information. And then also to create a way to store credit card details. But this also relates to a section later in the course where we'll show you what you can do to be able to process payments without having to process it through either the App Store or through the Google Play Store. Okay, so we've just finished up creating our homepage, our sign up page, and our sign in page. So we can tick off our register accounts. Now we're going to go and create our user settings page as well as the driver details registration. And then we're going to do a full overview of creating this login page and then also go through the user account settings. So we're going to go back into our editor and go here, new page, go to mobile view, and we're going to call this settings. And here we're also going to do a scrollable view. We're not going to clone anything yet. And now we get to our new page. So at the top, we are going to go to the left, add a group. And then inside this group, we want to add a picture. And this is where we will upload the user profile picture. Then underneath, we will have the name, and then also a way to add payment details. So the first item we're going to add is an image. So we can type image on the left, and it goes into a big square. So what we're going to do is we're going to turn this to 100 pixels. So make that the max width 100 pixels. We'll keep that as 0. And all we're going to do is go to the appearance side, go to roundness. We're going to change this to 500. So you're going to have to type that. And what it will do is turn it into a circle. We're going to put a border there. You can see now we have our basic image. So we're going to put that into the centered, and underneath we can add either some text, and then what we can also do here is add in a button, or we can add in an icon. So what we can do is here you can say click to upload profile picture, and we can center that and then put that into the middle. So now this photo here is going to become the profile picture. So we can set here dynamic image, where we need to go current user's profile picture. So that will pull in the user's existing photo. And what we can do is in our data types, if you want to go to the user, you can actually set profile picture as the default. So here you could put like a plus button or just an empty photo so that it incentivizes the user to upload a photo. Okay, so over here on this here, we can actually change this to a button, and we're going to go button, icon, and label. And the icon, we're going to type plus. So we're going to put add, so we can get this button, or we can even put another one that says, well, the upload icon for pictures. And we're just going to copy this text and we paste it here. We can delete that initial text. And what we're going to do for this is we're actually going to remove this background. So we're going to set the color to black for the text, set the color to black for the icon, and then remove this background. So now you can see this will have this button and this profile over here. So we're going to go and add a workflow. And now here we're going to go and look for a native mobile input. So here we're going to say click open camera library. And then what we're going to do with this after is say make changes to current user. In this current user, we're going to go to the profile picture, and then we're going to look for result of step 1. Now that will set whatever picture the user clicks on, it'll take that image and then set that as the profile picture. But there are some settings we need to adjust first to be able to actually use this in our app. So we're going to go over to settings, and we're going to go to over here, the mobile, native mobile, and we're going to go down to device permissions, and here we can enable camera access, photo library access, and then what we're going to use later is location services, so we're going to add that as well. So now that means we can click on this item to upload a photo, but when this image has value, we want to change this. So we're going to go to our conditionals, and we're going to say when current user, their profile picture is not empty, we're going to say update. So here we're going to type text, or because it's a button, we need to type label. We find label, and then here we're just going to say update profile picture. And because it's not really something that they're going to do every time they go on, we can make this a lot smaller. So we can say font. We say the font size. Font size we're just going to change to 10. So now we have this area for our profile picture. What we're going to do is add some margin to the top, which can be 20. And what else we're actually going to do here is turn this into a row and put that down into the middle. Actually, we can keep that as a column. So now we have our profile picture area. We're going to add in another group. And now this group is going to show the user's name that they added on sign up. So we're going to add in text. We can call this name. And then underneath, we're going to search for an input, and we can drag the input in here. So now we have basic input. So we're going to give it some styling. We're going to add 20 margins to the left, 20 margins to the right. And now this input, we're going to input as change the name to input user name, and we're going to quickly adjust some styling. So we'll make that 10 for the roundness, and in the border we can make black just to give it a bit more of a visible item. This top name, we're going to change weighting to 600, and now we need to go and edit what is shown here. So before we do that, we're going to type in on the left button and drag that in there, and we can click next, and this is going to be save or update. So we can say update information, and we can make this button a bit smaller. So we can make that 40, and let's change the roundness to 10, and let's change the background color to the gray we were using from the other items. So it just means we need to update the font color to black. Okay, so now you can see they all kind of stacked into one each other. So what we're going to do here is go to layout. We can say apply spacing between elements, and here we can just add value like 15. Okay, so now we need to go back to this input username, and we're going to set the initial content. So here we're going to look for current user, and then we're going to say their name. Cool. So let's go preview this quickly. And you can see here, I haven't actually gone in as a user, so it comes up as empty. We have no profile picture, and we can click to upload. So let's go and run it as a user. We go to our users tab, app data, and we don't actually have a user just yet. So we will go through the sign up process in a bit and check that it's all working. Okay, so let's say the user gets to this page and they want to update their display name. So we need to click on our button here, and then we need to say make changes to current user, and then we're going to update their name. Name is equal to the input we just created, which is input usernames value. So now that's going to save, but generally it'll save, but we don't actually know if it has gone through and saved correctly. So we're going to add in a new plugin. We go to plugins on the left, add plugin, and this we're going to look for Toast. We can uncheck web, and this we can say Toast message for native, or we could even use this Toast notification for mobile. We can take the top one, and now we have this item here. So we go back to our design, go back to this button, which will save the workflow. First, we need to go in and add the Toast element onto the page, and I'm just going to drag it into this group below. Then now we have it on our page, we can go back to this place here, and here we're going to say Toast, show a Toast message, and then we're going to edit this message itself. So we'll say save, and you can say whatever you want, save successfully or updated, etc. Okay, cool. So now we have our basic page for the user. We'll have the name, the ability to add the profile picture, and now we also need to add in a way to add payment method. So we're going to do a basic setup for payment method here, and then we'll go through an advanced way to set it up, especially for mobile native, as generally there's two ways that you can sort payments. One which goes through the Apple App Store or Google Play, and then another is being able to receive payments through the web store, similar to how Spotify does their payments. And this just means you will be able to keep all of the payments instead of having to give your percentage to Apple as the hosting fee, essentially. So we're going to add in a new group below, and we're going to type in some text. This will say payment method is required. We can update the font weighting to 500. We can also go to this group C, which is the parent element, and say 2020, just to give it some styling. And then underneath, we're going to add in another text. This is going to say update payment method. We can keep that a little bit smaller, and we're just going to make it italic. So you have the kind of text here that stands out a little bit, so you know that you need to update the method. And then we're going to add in a button. And this button, we're going to say fit width to content, and we say add card. We're going to change the background, give it 10 pixels roundness. Okay. So now when the user clicks on this card, we can either use it in our web app builder where we can redirect them. For now, we're just going to create a floating window or floating group. So we're going to drag in floating group and click on that group itself. We're going to say floats relative to both, which means it'll go to the middle of the page, and then the horizontal will go to center. So now we're going to go quickly add our 10% or 10 pixel roundness and border. border we can make black. And now inside here, we need to get 3 elements, which would be able to keep the data for processing a payment. To do this, we're going to first add in a group. This group, we are going to make sure that it stays at 100%. And we're going to add in a text element. And this is going to be card number. Then underneath, we need to add in an input. And here we're going to change this to an integer. Okay, so now we quickly need to go back to our floating group. We go to the layout and we're going to add in some padding. We're going to put 10 pixels on each side, the top, bottom, left, and right. We can click back on our input. We rename it card number, and the placeholder we're just going to put 2, 3, 4, 5. And then here we can say the set max range, and this you can set to the specific amount of details or numbers you allow to be put in. So you know that a credit card or a debit card won't have 20 items, so you can set that as well. Now we're going to go to this main group. We're going to press Control C, Control V. And now inside here, we are going to go to this container, and we're going to set this min width back to 0. And the max width we are going to put to 50. Now we're going to go one more time. We're going to go Control C, Control V. You can see that all the items are stacking underneath each other. So what we need to do is change this to a row. And now these other elements have all gone to the left. So we need to say fit width to content on both of these items. And this one on the left, we are going to ask for the expiration date. And then on the right, we're going to change that to the CVV. Now the CVV will remain a 3-digit number, and the expiry date, we're going to delete this input and we're going to search for date. So this will be a date picker. We're going to drag it into that group. Now we just need to make sure that we give it the correct width so it fits in. And there we go. So now we have the basic setup for being able to capture card details. So add a button in here, and what we're also going to do is fit width to content. We just need to scroll, and this one we need to actually change these items to fit width, and then this we can put in the center, and the button we can change the name to add card, and let's change this color and give it our roundness. Cool. So now you can see that these items are all added and they have their specific inputs, but they're all a little bit squashed. So we're going to go to the main floating group element. I'm going to say apply some column gap 10. Sorry, not column gap. We're going to add in row gap. And this will just give it a little bit of space underneath each other. So from here, this would then add in that specific user's card details, and you will be able to process payments with that. But we will add in a section at the end to go through this in detail and the best way to enable payments through your mobile apps. Cool. So what we would need to do here is hide this floating group. And then when someone says click a card, we need to go here and then we say show an element. And this element will be floating group. And then go back to that floating group. And we see that here, when we click add a card, we would generally save the information. But for now, we're just going to say hide an element, which will close this floating group. And we go give that a quick test. Okay, so you see we get onto the page and it shows by default. So what we need to do is go to this item, go to layout, and this element is visible on page load. We're going to uncheck and refresh. There you go. So now you can see we have these different areas to add our details. We can add in, I'm just going to make my profile picture this car picture, and that will upload. And then we could click add card. We could add in our numbers, and then here on our select date, we would select a date. We'd add the card and it would go away. Cool. So now this is for the basic settings page on the user profile. Now we need to make sure that when a user signs in, that they get redirected to that page. So we're going to go to the sign up. And when a user says sign up, when they click yes, we are going to say go to tab. The target view is going to be settings. So you can see we don't actually have a tab here. So we need to go back to settings, back to the page itself. And here we're going to click on the main settings page. We're going to click include as tab item. So you can see we just got a new element at the bottom of our screen. Here we're going to just type settings, and we're going to find an icon that we can add for our settings page. And there you go. So now we can go back to sign up, go to our sign up button, edit workflow, and this is going to go to our settings page. Now we need to make sure that only on the sign up button does the user go to the settings page, but the driver actually has an additional step. So we need to create a condition here that only sends the user or the rider type to the settings page. So we're going to add a condition on this step 2, which says only when current user type is rider. So this means if a driver clicks sign up, they won't go to that page just yet. And now we're going to go into creating the driver registration page. So over here, we have our sign up, but we're going to go here to new mobile view. And this we're going to call driver registration. This driver registration is going to require a certain amount of fields. So we're going to take this actual sign up page and we're going to use that to create our driver registration. Actually, let's not do that. Let's just create it from scratch. We're going to clear the selection and we're going to use a scrollable view. So we're going to go create. Let's go to this page. Cool. So our view title is driver registration. So first things, we're going to add in a group over here. We're going to add in some text. And this we're just going to show driver registration. Now, this is going to be a mandatory field, so we don't need to add any or a mandatory page where there are fields that need to be filled in. So we're not going to add any navigation to it. And we're going to set that to 600, and there we go. So now we're going to add in another group, and now in these groups we're going to have text with an input, and then the driver will need to fill in each one of those fields to be able to complete their registration. So we're going to type on the left text, another one on the left, we can type input. Now this over here will be the label. So let's go to our database and we're going to look at all drivers' vehicles. Then we're going to go to data types and we need to look at these values over here. And these are the values that we need to collect from the driver. So year, number plate, model, make, driver, which is the registered user, and color. And then this yes or no proof is for the admin. So we're going to go and back to our design. And we're going to type over here, car make. And input A, we can then relabel to car make. Now we're just going to go control, before we actually copy that. Okay, so we add our 20 margins to the left. We're going to add 20 margins to the right. And let's just add in a border on this so we can see it a little bit easier. And then also we're going to update our roundness. So now we have our car make over here. You can actually make this a little bit better, make that 500 weight. And what we're going to do is we're going to go Control C, Control V. Then over here, we're going to change this to the car model. We update our inputs name to be the car model. Okay, so we Control C, Control V on the car model. Here we are going to update this to color, and we're going to update the input name to input color. Then we're going to Control C, Control V. Here we are going to say year. This will be the car year make. We're going to say input year, and this will be either an integer or text numbers only. So we're going to set that for integer. Then we can go Control C, Control V, and this is going to be the number plate. So we can just update this to be a text type, and then the input, we're going to change the name to input number plate. So let's go have a quick look and see if we have all of the types that we need. So we go to our vehicles, approved, we're going to add that to an admin. Color, driver, we're going to add now, make, model, number plate, and year. So we have all the types that we need. Now what we're going to do is go to the left, add a button. And this button is going to say finish registration. And what we're going to do there is add 20 margins to the top of that. We're going to say fit the width to the content. We're going to center it. And then we can go and update the color and the roundness. So now when we finish this registration, we need to go and add this information to that specific user. So we're going to say create a new thing. And this thing is going to be a driver's vehicle. And here we can say add all fields. We're going to remove this add approved because we've set the default value for that as no. Now for color, we're going to type input colors value driver. We're going to say input. We're not going to say input. We're going to say current user. The make, we say input car makes value model. We'll say input car models value. Number plates, we'll say input number plates value. And then the year, we say input years value. Okay, so now that will add all the information of that driver. It'll set their approved status to no, and that will then be passed to an admin. And from there, we're going to want to redirect them to a tab. So we're going to say go to tab, but we haven't created that page just yet, so we're going to leave it blank for now. Cool, so now we have our driver registration. Last thing we need to do on this page is, just in case, we can add in a user type here. So we're going to add a new property. The label will be called driver, and we can say dynamic value, and this is going to be a user. So this is either the option. We're going to go through and test now, where we can either say current user if we've sent through the user and they're signed in, or if they aren't, and you want to do this before the sign up process or before you've created the user's account, you could then use the current pages user, which you pull from that property. So let's go back to our sign up page. And here we're going to go to edit the workflow like we've done for this user. Now here we're going to say go to a view, and that view is going to be driver registration. The user we're going to send is the current user, or we could pull the value that we had before, which was signups user. Okay, so now we need to add in the conditional here to make sure that current user type is driver. So this means that only the user types for rider will be sent to the setting page on sign up, and drivers will be sent to the registration. But now we need to make an important change here on this sign up. We need to actually create that user type for that user. And what we've done on our sign up page, remember we pulled in the sign up users display. So it means that the user's gone through this flow and we have captured the user type according to that button they pressed. And this will be able to pull in that specific user type. So just like we've added these, we're going to go to this sign the user up button, or the flow step 1, and we're going to change another field. And that field is going to be the user type. And this user type is going to be sign ups user type. So that means we are going to have the user add in their details. We'll click the sign the user up button. This will then sign the user up with this information, add their name, their phone number, and then also assign them a specific user type according to the role that they chose. And then if they were a rider, they'll go through to settings. And if they were a driver, they'll go through to the driver settings. So let's go back and look at our list. We need to do an overview of our login page quickly. And then we're looking at here where we've separated the groups for driver and rider details. We can tick that off. We've added a basic way to store card details. We've now added the driver registration, and we're going to go through and test that the display content is working. So you can see display success alert. So here we can go to either our registration page, and we can add an alert here, but because this is going to take them to a new page, this will almost insinuate that it has saved. So it's really up to you guys if you want to add it. So let's go through and we're going to test our sign-in flow. First, I'm going to go to our data, just make sure that we don't have any users running here. We're just going to delete these, and let's go and refresh here. And let's try a driver setup. So you can see it says driver sign in, but we don't actually have an account. So we need to go to the sign up. We can see our styling here is a little bit off, but we can come back and fix that. Or we can just preview on a bigger phone. And this will be driver test. Phone number, we can just say 082 123 45678. Email, we'll say driver@demo.com. Password, we can just add some numeric values. And then we're going to click sign up. You can see it takes us to our driver registration page. So let's put in some cars here. We say the make or the model is a Prius. color we'll say is white. Year, let's put 2018. The number plate is CT12345. And then here we can go finish registration. So this now will save that item, but remember we haven't added a place for them to go to yet. So what we can do is go over here to our debug, and we can just watch this step by step go through the process. So you can see element is clicked, next, create new driver's vehicle. You can see it's taken all of our items and created an item in our database, but it doesn't have a value yet to go through to. So we'll come back to that a bit later and add that page. Now we've added a driver. Let's go through and we're going to refresh. And now we're going to test a rider sign up. So we don't have a rider account yet. So we're going to go sign up. Name, and we can call this rider test. Phone number, we just add some random numbers. Email, we'll call this rider@test.com. And password, we'll add in some other values. And we're going to click sign up. And there you go. You can see that it takes us to our rider profile. And you see the name that I just entered goes into this place over here. Now on the smaller phone, this doesn't look too great. So we can go and update our different items a little bit later and work on the styling. So there we go. We've done an overview of create our login. We've updated our user account settings, and let's just test that our display success alert works here. So we're just going to change this name to rider. There we go. We see we have our icon that says saved. Cool. So in the next one, we're going to go through creating an admin dashboard and then also look at creating a home page, which goes through all of the items, creating the pickup, drop off, as well as the routing, etc. So we've just gone through these following features. We've created the register accounts for drivers and riders. We've done the details registration, created the settings page with separate groups, and we've gone through that sign up process. So now what we need to do is create an admin dashboard. And what we're going to do here is create the admin dashboard, and we're going to use a vertical list. So we can go back to our app, create a new mobile view, and this we're going to call admin, and we're going to select vertical list. So now in this page, we are actually going to reference the driver and the vehicle type, or the driver vehicle type. And then this will show the users that have submitted requests to be approved. And then from here, the admin will be able to use some mobile settings to either swipe to approve or swipe to deny. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is we're going to go over to our vertical list, and we are going to use the driver vehicles data type. Here we can say do a search for driver's vehicle. And here we can also set a constraint. So now a constraint will filter our searching. So if you can remember, we have a data type in our drivers that is approved yes or no. So what we can do here on this admin page is either leave all the people that are there with yes and no values, or we can just search for the items that have approved status of no. So we're going to set that as the constraint approved is equal to no. So let's add a text item just at the top of the page here. Don't seem to be able to add text right now. So we'll just drop it there, and then we can drag. So we're going to drag it just above the vertical list item. So it'll only show just below there. What we can do is just remove or set this fit height to content. And we're going to call this admin, or we're going to say driver approval. And we can make the weighting 600, can center the text, and let's add a bottom border. So we can go down to here, set each border independently. Bottom border, we can go solid. We're going to make that black, and we'll give it a width of 2. So it just has a bit of spacing. And let's also add some padding there. Add 10 on the top and 10 on the bottom. I'll just give it a bit of space. So now in this actual group here, this vertical list, we've just set it to search for drivers. So now we're going to click on the item A, and here we're going to search for the actual driver's name. So this one will be current items driver's vehicle, and then we're going to look for the creator. Because the driver went through the registration and created that entry, it means that their user type will be linked to that driver's vehicle. And then we're going to go driver's vehicles creator, and then we're going to use their name. So before we can actually go and view this, if we view it now, we're going to see that nothing actually shows up. The reason for this is if we go into data and then to privacy, you can see that our user type has a privacy rule. So we're going to delete this one, and we're going to create a new rule. And this is going to be called admin view. So we can create, and we're going to say when current user type is admin, then they will be able to view all fields, find in searches, and view attached files. So now in order to view this, we're going to go and create a user. And what we're going to do is we're going to call this admin user. We'll leave out these things. We're going to set them to the admin user type, and then this will be admin@test.com. You can put your own values there, and we're going to click save. So now we're going to run as the admin, and you can see that our first name comes up, which was our driver test, the account we had registered previously. So now we just have a basic name here. So now we need to add some functionality to it to be able to approve the driver. So what we're going to do here is we're going to click on the vertical item list A, and then this button on the side we are going to add. So here we're just going to say, we go for check. We're going to add a tick, and we can make that color green, and then we're going to say save. And then we can add another one over here to say either delete the user if they've been rejected. But for now, we're just going to leave that blank. So now we're going to go to this item. We're going to click on it, and we're going to go add workflow. Now, this is going to make changes to a thing. And that thing we're going to change is the current item's driver vehicle. And what we're going to change is actually the approved status. So all you need to do over here is things to change is look for the value, and then we're going to change the field itself. So approved is equal to yes. And what we can do is add in toast over here. So we can just drop that at the top, and we can make the height 1 pixel just so it doesn't affect our styling. And then once that is done, we can say show toast message, and we're going to say driver approved. And now because our search item will only look for the no drivers, once we accept that, it'll show the toast, and then that driver will go away from the list. But now we also want to make sure that you can actually verify the driver himself. So we're going to add in a button here as well. Well, let's not add a button, let's add an icon. And this icon, we're just going to say info. We're going to make the color black. And now when we click this, we want to show a list with all that driver's details. So we're going to go to the left, and we're going to search for sheet. We're going to drag a sheet into the page, and then we can start styling this. So what we're going to put here is just a text value, which will say driver details. Can center that for when it's in the middle, and then we're just going to put that in the center. We can make the weighting for that 700, and we can underline it, but we're just going to leave that for now. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we are going to add either different groups, or we could just add different text items. What we're going to do though is add in a group, and we're just going to drop some text in. Before we start editing that, let's make sure that we have some padding on each side. So we're going to put padding as 20 and 20, and we can also add some on the top. Let's just do 10 on the top and 10 on the bottom. So now let's go to this text over here. Now what we want to show here is the driver's vehicle details. So if we go look at our database, our driver vehicle types are the color, driver, make, model, number plates, and year. So because we've already gone through this except, what we're going to do here is add the driver details. So what we can do is say car make, and then we're going to copy that one, car model, and here we can just say color, year, and the last one is the number plate. I'm going to quickly just add a space in these items just to give it a bit of uniform styling. Cool. So now you can see that we have all the areas where we will be able to pull some data, but now we need to actually set the sheet to be the driver details. So we can set it from here, but we can also go to this item, and then we set our flow, and it will assist us. So what we want to happen is when we click this I button, we want the sheet to show like a pop-up, which will show us the driver details if we want to see the information. So we're going to go add workflow, and this will be show an element. The element we want to show is a sheet, but now we need to also send that specific data from that row into that sheet. So what we can do is display data in a group, and here we're just going to start sheet. We say current items driver, and now we get this pop-up that says sheet driver details is content type is not set. The data you're displaying now is type driver details. So we can click here to change the sheet's value. So let's go back and check our sheet now. We can display. You can see that it's changed the type of content to driver's vehicle. Cool. So now we're going to go into our sheet and we're going to use the parent group's driver's vehicles data now. So this is going to be the creator's name, the car make. So because we've used a group, we need to set this parent group to also parent groups thing. So let me show you in the breakdown. So we have our sheet, which is driver's vehicle, then text, which relates directly. Now this one, we need to also go vehicle or driver's vehicle. And then we're just going to say parent group's vehicle. And we need to do this for the rest. Probably should have started with that one and then we can copy paste those items. So once again, we go to the container group of the text and we go vehicle, parent group's vehicle. Let's do it for the last two. And the last one. Cool. So now we can go over here into that specific group to that text value. Now you can see it pulls through the value of the driver's vehicle from the sheet. So we can say here, this is the car make. So we say make car model. We just click in the text, insert dynamic value, parent groups car model. We go to color, go to the text value, insert dynamic data, parent groups vehicle, the color. Then we can go to year. We go into year, insert dynamic data, parent group's driver's vehicle, and we're going to add the year. And then the last one, we're going to add the value for insert dynamic data, parent group's vehicle, and then number plate. So one last thing we can do here, just to make it stand out a little bit, is we go onto the item, click rich text editor, then we're just going to select this text, and we're going to say bold. You can see it makes it stand out a little bit better. And let's do it for these ones. And color, year, and number plate. Perfect. So let's add a little bit of spacing here. And what we can do is actually go to the sheet itself, apply spacing between elements, and then row gap, we can add 10. So let's actually add 5 just in case we have styling. But this is a scrollable element, so it should scale on smaller devices. So let's go and preview this page now. So you can see that our item here is not looking too good. So let's quickly go back to the design. We're going to click on the sheet, and then we're going to click space between items, which will essentially split the items apart from each other if you have 2 elements. So we'll refresh. Okay, so one more thing. Let's click on this icon and then put it down to the middle, because this is also vertically centered. And let's go back. We can close that page. All right. So now you can see we have the option to slide to the right, which will accept the driver, or we can click on this item. We can actually go out of inspecting, preview. We can click here, and then it's going to show us the information of this driver. So you can see here, driver test, Toyota, Prius, color 2018, and then the number plate. And we can scroll down there. And now that we have this driver, we're able to accept them. So I'll slide, and then we can see driver approved. Cool. So that is our basic admin page, and that's how we will then enable a driver to be able to start accepting trips. Okay, cool. So we've just gone through these following features. We've created the register accounts for drivers and riders. We've done the details registration, created the settings page with separate groups, and we've gone through that sign up process. So now what we need to do is create an admin dashboard. And what we're going to do here is create the admin dashboard, and we're going to use a vertical list. So we can go back to our app, create a new mobile view, and this we're going to call admin, and we're going to select vertical list. Wait for that to load. So now in this page, we are actually going to reference the driver and the vehicle type, or the driver vehicle type. And then this will show the users that have submitted requests to be approved. And then from here, the admin will be able to use some mobile settings to either swipe to approve or swipe to deny. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is we're going to go over to our vertical list, and we are going to use the driver vehicles data type. Here we can say do a search for driver's vehicle, And here we can also set a constraint. So now a constraint will filter our searching. So if you can remember, we have a data type in our drivers that is approved yes or no. So what we can do here on this admin page is either leave all the people that are there with yes and no values, or we can just search for the items that have approved status of no. So we're going to set that as the constraint approved is equal to no. Cool. So let's add a text item just at the top of the page here. Don't seem to be able to add text right now, so we'll just drop it there, and then we can drag. Cool. So we're going to drag it just above the vertical list item. So it'll only show just below there. What we can do is just remove or set this fit height to content. And we're going to call this admin, or we're going to say driver approval. And we can make the weighting 600. We can center the text. And let's add a bottom border. So we can go down to here, set each border independently. Bottom border, we can go solid. We're going to make that black, and we'll give it a width of 2. So it just has a bit of spacing, and let's also add some padding there. We add 10 on the top and 10 on the bottom. I'll just give it a bit of space. Cool. So now in this actual group here, this vertical list, we just set it to search for drivers. So now we're going to click on the item A, and here we're going to search for the actual driver's name. So this one will be current items driver's vehicle, and then we're going to look for the creator. Because the driver went through the registration and created that entry, it means that their user type will be linked to that driver's vehicle. And then we're going to go driver's vehicles creator, and then we're going to use their name. Okay, so before we can actually go and view this, if we view it now, we're going to see that nothing actually shows up. The reason for this is if we go into data and then to privacy, you can see that our user type has a privacy rule. So we're going to delete this one, and we're going to create a new rule. And this is going to be called admin view. So we can create. Now we're going to say when current user type is admin, then they will be able to view all fields, find in searches, and view attached files. So now in order to view this, we're going to go and create a user. And what we're going to do is we're going to call this admin user. We'll leave out these things. We're going to set them to the admin user type. And then this will be admin@test.com. You can put your own values there. And we're going to click save. So now we're going to run as the admin. And you can see that our first name comes up, which was our driver test, the account we had registered previously. So now we just have a basic name here. So now we need to add some functionality to it to be able to approve the driver. So what we're going to do here is we're going to click on the vertical item list A, and then this button on the side we are going to add. So here we're just going to say, we're going to type yes, or let's go for check. We're going to add a tick, and we can make that color green, and then we're going to say save. And then we can add another one over here to say either delete the user if they've been rejected. But for now, we're just going to leave that blank. Okay, so now we're going to go to this item. We're going to click on it, and we're going to go add workflow. Now, this is going to make changes to a thing. And that thing we're going to change is the current items driver vehicle. And what we're going to change is actually the approved status. So all you need to do over here is things to change is look for the value, and then we're going to change the field itself. So approved is equal to yes. And what we can do is add in a toast over here. So we can just drop that at the top, and we can make the height 1 pixel just so it doesn't affect our styling. And then once that is done, we can say show a toast message, and we're going to say driver approved. Cool. And now because our search item will only look for the no drivers, Once we accept that, it'll show the toast, and then that driver will go away from the list. But now we also want to make sure that you can actually verify the driver themselves. So we're going to add in a button here as well. Well, let's not add a button, let's add an icon. And this icon, we're just going to say info. We're going to make the color black. And now when we click this, we want to show a list with all that driver's details. So we're going to go to the left and we're going to search for sheet. We're going to drag a sheet into the page, and then we can start styling this. So what we're going to put here is just a text value, which will say driver details. You can center that for when it's in the middle, and then we're just going to put that in the center. We can make the weighting for that 700, and we can underline it, but we're just going to leave that for now. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we are going to add either different groups, or we could just add different text items. What we're going to do though is add in a group, and we're just going to drop some text in. Before we start editing that, let's make sure that we have some padding on each side. So we're going to put padding as 20 and 20, and we can also add some on the top. Let's just do 10 on the top and 10 on the bottom. So now let's go to this text over here. Now what we want to show here is the driver's vehicle details. So if we go look at our database, our driver vehicle types are the color, driver, make, model, number plates, and year. So because we've already gone through this except, what we're going to do here is add the driver details. So what we can do is say car make, and then we're going to copy that one, car model, and here we're going to say color, year, and the last one is the number plate. Number plate. I'm going to quickly just add a space between, add a space in these items just to give it a bit of uniform styling. Cool. So now you can see that we have all the areas where we will be able to pull some data. But now we need to actually set the sheet to be the driver details. So we can set it from here, but we can also go to this item and then we set our flow and it will assist us. So what we want to happen is when we click this I button, we want the sheet to show like a pop-up, which will show us the driver details if we want to see the information. So we're going to go add workflow, and this will be show an element. The element we want to show is a sheet, but now we need to also send that specific data from that row into that sheet. So what we can do is display data in a group, and here we're just going to start sheet. We say current items driver, and now we get this pop-up that says sheet driver details is content type is not set. The data you're displaying now is type driver details. So we can click here to change the sheet's value. So let's go back and check our sheet now. We can display. You can see that it's changed the type of content to driver's vehicle. Cool. So now we're going to go into our sheet and we're going to use the parent group's driver's vehicles data now. So this is going to be the creator's name. The car make is going to be, so because we've used a group, we need to set this parent group to also parent groups thing. So let me show you in the breakdown. So we have our sheet, which is driver's vehicle, then text, which relates directly. Now this one, we need to also go vehicle or driver's vehicle, and then we're just going to say parent group's vehicle. And we need to do this for the rest. Probably should have started with that one, and then we can copy paste those items. So once again, we go to the container group of the text, and we go vehicle, parent group's vehicle. Let's do it for the last two. And the last one. Cool. So now we can go over here into that specific group to that text value. Now you can see it pulls through the value of the driver's vehicle from the sheet. So we can say here, and this is the car make. So we say make car model. We just click in the text, insert dynamic value, parent groups, car model. We go to color, go to the text value, insert dynamic data, parent groups vehicle, the color. Then we can go to year. We go into year, insert dynamic data, parent groups drivers vehicle, and we're going to add the year. And then the last one, you're going to add the value for insert dynamic data, parent groups vehicle, and then number plate. So one last thing we can do here, just to make it stand out a little bit, is we go onto the item, click Rich Text Editor. Then we're just going to select this text, and we're going to say bold. You can see it makes it stand out a little bit better. And let's do it for these ones. And color, year, and number plate. Perfect. So let's add a little bit of spacing here. And what we can do is actually go to the sheet itself, apply spacing between elements, and then row gap we can add 10. So let's actually add 5 just in case we have styling. But this is a scrollable element, so it should scale on smaller devices. Okay, so let's go and preview this page now. So you can see that our item here is not looking too good. So let's quickly go back to the design. We're going to click on the sheet, and then we're going to click space between items, which will essentially split the items apart from each other if you have 2 elements. So we'll refresh. Okay, so one more thing. Let's click on this icon and then put it down to the middle, because this is also vertically centered. And let's go back. We can close that page. All right. So now you can see we have the option to slide to the right, which will accept the driver, or we can click on this item. We can actually go out of inspecting to preview. We can click here, and then it's going to show us the information of this driver. So you can see here, driver test, Toyota Prius, color 2018, and then the number plate. And we can scroll down there. And now that we have this driver, we're able to accept them. So I'll slide, and we can see driver approved. Cool. So that is our basic admin page, and that's how we will then enable a driver to be able to start accepting trips. In this section, we are going to create one of the main pieces of functionality for the app, and that's going to be the ride page. Now, on this page, we are going to utilize a couple of different elements, such as getting user location using Google Maps. And for this, we're going to need to use our Cloud Console to get some API keys. And then we're going to use some custom states and some option sets to be able to calculate trip pricing, and also then the process of how to request a trip and send it through to the drivers to be able to accept it and then go into the trip itself. Okay, cool. So we've just finished creating our admin dashboard where we can approve our riders. Now we're going to quickly go through and see page list and what we've created. Created our homepage, sign in, sign up, settings, admin, driver registration. And now we're going to go and create the ride page. And this is going to be a non-scrollable. So we go to the home, new mobile view, and this we're going to call ride. We're not going to clone from anything. Just do that and then clear selection. And we're going to go to, this is a not scrollable. So now here we are going to replicate the ride page from the Uber app. Now the first thing we're going to add in is a group. And we can add the group in the top. And this group we're going to call group destinations. Now in here we're going to add in our pickup location and our drop-off location. So we're going to add a subgroup into there. So we type group. We're going to drag a group in. So you can see here on the left, group destinations, and then underneath, we're going to call this group start location. And inside here, we're going to type on the left icon. We're going to add in an icon. And then on the left, we go again, and we're going to type input. Cool. So now the items are stacked one underneath each other. So we need to click on the start location group and then change that to a row. And then here we can just go to the icon. We can put that in the middle, box in the middle as well. And this icon we are going to change to, you can say start. Maybe this one we can actually put location, and we're just going to use that one. We update the color to black. And now this input we're going to click on, and we're going to change this to input start location. or we're going to put /current. And this format, we're going to scroll down, and this is going to be address. Okay, so now we have an input for our address here. Now what we're going to do on this main top group is we add 20 margin to the top and then also 20 to the bottom. Cool. And now let's fix the actual styling of how this is going to look. So we click on the group start location, which holds all the sub elements, and we're going to add 20 margin to the left and 20 margin to the right. And what we're going to do is actually give this group a border and not the actual elements. So we're going to go solid for the border, add 10 pixels around this, and we can update the border color to black. So it gives us this look over here. Now we need to go to the actual input, and we're going to remove the borders from this input. So then it all fits within this group like this. Perfect. So now that we have our input element, we're going to go Control-C, Control-V on group, sorry, not group destinations. Delete that. On group start location, we say Control-C, Control-V. And now this group over here is going to be group end location, or let's put rather drop off location. And we're going to update the icon. And this we can put, and just type start for this map or the flag. And we need to go and we need to update the name of our input. So this will be input drop off location. Cool, so now we have those two elements. Now we just need to add a bit of spacing in between. So we click on group destinations, and we're going to click apply gap spacing between elements. And here we're just going to put 10. So that gives a bit of a gap in between. Now we can add an element just for design purposes, and that is going to be a shape. So we're going to drag our shape in, and you can see it is quite big. So we're going to change the width to 2 pixels, and the height, because these have now 10 gap in the spacing, and then it also needs to overlap a bit. We can make the height of this, the shape, we're going to make the height, let's go 30 for now. And then what we're going to do on the margins is we're going to say -15 on the top and -15 on the bottom. And now we have this 20 pixels of spacing on these items. So we need to add 20, which puts it to the edge. And now we can go look at the width of these items, which is 30. So we can take half of that, go to our shape, and we're going to add 15 onto there. So that will be 35. You can see it brings it to the middle. And now we can change that color. So we just get an element that almost connects the two items, just for a bit of stylistic display. All right. So now in our starting area, we're going to have the initial content to be one of our data types, which is current user's current location. So this will pull the user's current location, or they'd be able to exit that and put in their own pickup location. So now what we need to do is create a workflow that is going to capture the current location of the user on the page load. So we go to the left, we're going to add a folder, we call this page load. Location, and we're going to add in a workflow there. So now this is going to say when this page loads, say page is loaded, we're going to run this workflow. And what we need to do is actually request location permissions. So now this we only need to do once to get the user to accept the location permissions, and then we will get their actual location. So we go to the next one, native mobile, and here we're going to say get current location. So that will get the location. And then we're going to make changes to current user. And the item we're going to change is current location. It's going to equal step 2. So now once this workflow runs once, it means that the current user will have a value in their settings or in the database associated with that user. So we don't need to request location permissions every time. So we're going to say on this item, we're going to say only when current user's current location is empty, then that item will run. The rest of these will run when the user opens the page. So now we have our inputs over here. Now we're going to add in our map item. So we go over here to map, and we're going to add in a map. And first thing, we'll go click on the map, add 20 margins left and 20 margins right. And what we can also do is change the rounders just to fit the rest of the items. And now what we need to do here is go to this item. We're going to not look for a single marker. We're going to look for a list of markers. And this type of markers is going to be a geographic address. But now we need to look at the data source. Now, because we've selected this item is a list, we need to pull a list of items. So currently we have two inputs which won't create a list. So we need to create a custom state that creates a list of these two items. So we're going to go to group destinations. We're going to click this eye icon and we're going to say add a new custom state. Now this state is going to be called locations, and we're going to add in a geographic address. And then we need to click this state is a list, multiple entries, create. Cool. So now we have a state set, or we have a state created, and we're going to reference that state in the map. So we're going to type destinations. We're going to look for that group, and then we're going to say this locations. So that will pull the list that we set into the map. But now we need to go and actually add some functionality to add the specific values into that state. So we're going to look at the name of this item, which is our input drop-off. We're going to go to our workflow and we're going to add a new folder, and this will be called location set. And in location set, we're going to add plus. We say when an item and input value is changed. So we can look over here, say an input value is changed, and that changed input is going to be the drop-off location. So once the user adds in the drop-off location, they will then set the values of that state. Okay, so here we're going to go set state. We type set state of an element, and that element is going to be group destinations. Custom state is locations. Now what we're going to do is we're going to search for group destinations. This will pull the actual group in its current state, and we set the locations. We say plus item input start location, its value. Then we're going to say plus an item, and this will be input drop-off location, its value. Perfect. So now once there are values in those inputs or in the drop-off, it'll pull those two values, set the state, and then that will feed to the map itself. So now we need to go and add in our specific group types or our trip types. So we're going to add a group in the bottom. We can go and add 20 margin to the top. And now in this group, we are going to use a list, a short list. So we're going to drag in a short list. And you can see we get these items here. Now from earlier, we created our option sets, and we're going to pull in this car trip type. And this will have our UberX or our UberXL, and then also our price multiplier. Okay, so we're going to click on the shortlist itself. Then we go to type content. This is going to be an option set, car trip type. Data source, we're going to say all car and trip types. So that's going to pull in that option set here. Now in item 1, we're going to go to the text, insert dynamic value. We say current item's car trip type, it's display. So now that is going to pull in the specific name of that trip, like UberX or UberXL. Now what we also need to do is add in an image. So we're going to go to the left, type image, and we're going to drag that in there. Okay, let's look at the height. So let's make our max width of this 50, and it's going to keep the aspect ratio fixed, so it won't go bigger than 50 width or height. Okay, so now we're going to add in an image, and that image is going to be just this Uber car icon. And there we go, we have that one. And then the last thing we need to display there is the cost of that specific trip. So now what we need to do is create a few items, but we'll come back to that in a second. The last item that we need to add in here is a button, and that button is going to be the request trip button. So let's change this background to black, and we can add 20 margins on the left and 20 on the right. And we can add in a bit of padding on the top and bottom. Okay, so let's go and now add in our calculation for this trip price. So we're going to add in a text element. And first, let's go to this and make sure that the fit width to content is off. So that will go like that. We can put this in the center. This is also centered, and we'll center this. Now, this is going to pull a bit of a calculation. And then we're going to also use that number a little bit later to set a state to calculate the actual trip cost. So what we're going to do here is we're going to insert dynamic data, and we're going to say input drop-off locations. Sorry, we're going to actually go map A's current marker, and we say distance from and the origin address, which will be input start location and its value. So let's see that this all works. Distance from input marker. So here we can either choose miles or kilometers. I'm in South Africa, so I'm going to click kilometers. And this is going to then take the current marker, which we'll need to set, and then the distance from that marker to the start marker. Use that distance, and then it's going to multiply it by that specific option's price multiplier. So you can see, remember we set our price multipliers, and that was 20 in the UberX case. So essentially it's going to take that distance and then multiply it by 20. So we have that calculation. Now we're going to go and say times by current items car trip type, the price multiplier. And now because the distance is going to have quite a few decimal points, we need to go here and we say more. We say formatted as, and this will be to 2 decimal places. Okay, so now we have the display for our pricing there. And what we need to do is now set a state that will actually capture that proper value. So we can go over here, we're going to say copy expression, and we're going to go to the short list, and we're going to set a state here, which will be price, or let's call this trip price. And this is what we're going to set as a number. Cool. So we can say create, and now we have a trip price element. Perfect. So we need to now go and create some backend workflows to kind of create this as a type. But what we also need to do now, let's quickly go and have a look at our page, is we need to be able to actually select which trip we want to take, and then we'll be able to request the trip. So we need to add one more state on this short list. So we're going to go to info. So we'll go to the top one, and this one we're going to say trip type, or we say trip or car or trip type. And this is going to be a car or trip type like our option set. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to click on one of these items. It will set the type that we want, like an UberX or UberXL, and then also take that and set the state of the price, and then we're going to request the trip. So what we can do is click on this item. We go add workflow. We're going to say set state, and this is going to be on our shortlist item. So our shortlist car type, then the car or trip type is going to equal to current items car or trip type. And we're going to set another state, say set another state, or we can just go and add one below here. So it's going to be the trip price. And now what we're going to do here is go back to our initial display element of this. We're going to copy that expression, and we can go here and we can click paste. Now we get a bit of an error here because it's trying to reformat it. So we're just going to go back on this item. I'm going to leave that as just initial value times the price multiplier. So we'll need to format that a little bit later, or we can try and add in either a truncate or something just to make sure that it only goes to 2 decimal places. Cool. So now we'll have this type of item here where we will go and click and it will set the states. But now there's no visual reference for what's being clicked. So we're going to go into our shortlist. I'm going to click on item A. We'll go to conditionals. We say when this short, so we'll find actual shortlist. This shortlists, and then we go to our state. Car trip type is this shortlist item or current items car trip. Then we're going to add in a border style. We need to add first as solid, and we type border again. Border color, we're going to make black. So let's just refresh. Now you can see that we do have an error with the map coming through, but we're going to go add in our API keys now. And in the version of this bubble editor, there are some issues with the map showing. So we're going to go through and replicate this on the web app just to make sure that it is pulling through correctly. Cool. So let's go through here, and now we're going to click on this item. You can see now it selects that, or we select here, and we can go through and actually click out debug and just check that it's running the workflows. Element is clicked, and then it's going to set our states. Cool. Now you can see that we don't actually want these items to all show right off the bat. So we're going to now set some conditionals that go in almost a stacked order, as in when one has a value it shows, and then only once you select an item can you request a trip, etc. So our first thing that we need to go look at is this item here. Remember, when we edit this, it will then set the state of the destinations group. So we're going to go to our car type or our shortlist, and here we're going to set a conditional. Now, before we set that, we don't want this element to be visible on page load. So we're going to check that off. And we're going to say when group destinations locations, which is the state. Group destination locations count is greater than 1. So as in we have more than one destination there, then we say this element is visible. So essentially that will look for a value here in these items, and then only once there is a value will those car trip types show. So now we can go to our request trip item, and this item we're also going to go to layout and isn't visible on page load. And then we can say when the shortlist state, remember we're going to set the trip price and also the car type. So this we can choose if we want to allow to request after the trip is kind of set as a type, or only when there's a trip price. So we're going to go to our request trip button. We're going to look at this element is visible, make sure that's unchecked. Then here we're going to say when shortlist car types trip price is not empty, this element is visible. So now let's go and have a look at this in action. Okay, so I'm going to type in 2 locations here. This one will put, let me actually just use Cape Town, and that isn't working properly. So let's quickly go have a look at this. We set it as an address and initial content, or we can just say our placeholder. So let's remove that for now, just so we can test. Let's refresh. Okay, so we're going to try one more time here quickly, and pulls in our first address. And then this one I'm just going to say C point, and we still aren't getting a direct value there. So I think what we need to go do is add in our Google API keys. So you can see here, this is one of our errors from earlier, is you need to add in your own geocode API keys to process addresses. So in order to do this, we're going to open a new tab, and we're going to say Cloud Console, and I just need to log in quickly. So we're going to get onto our Google Cloud Console, and you'll need to set up a service account. And then from there, once you have a service account and a payment linked, you're going to go over here to API and services. And then from there, we're going to go to enable APIs and services. And here we can add in our different types of items that we need to display the specific maps. And for this one, we're just going to go and update a whole lot so we can make sure that all of our items are enabled. So we're going to add our places API. Let's say enable, wait for that to load. And we can grab our API key now. So we're going to copy, and we're going to go down to our general settings, and we'll find our geocode API key. And now, because these are all grouped within a service, we can add these all here. Then we need to make sure that we go and open or add and enable all of these keys. So I'm going to add in my keys there. But now what we need to do is go and find the Google Maps API key. So we can say go to Maps platform. The restriction here is, since we're building a specific app, but we might want to be on multiple IP or multiple things, we're just going to say API restriction, and then the restriction we are just going to leave open for now, and we're going to say we're going to use it for the Maps SDK, directions, distance matrix. We don't really need all of these items: Maps embed API, geolocate, geolocation, and Maps SDK, places API, static, and you can kind of go through and add in all the ones that you believe that you'll need. And let's go Street Views, and we can add titles as well as routes. Places API, perfect. And we won't need these items. Route optimization, no. Navigation, we can add in address validation. These are all more advanced, but we can set that to thing, or we could even just go maybe later. So we'll go restrict this key. But if you want to practice around there, you can say maybe later and then test your functionality. Okay, so let's go and double check that we have enabled all the correct APIs. So we need our Google Maps API key. So we can just type in here, Maps, Google Maps, and we can go Maps API. Oops, sorry, that's one of my previous items. API and services. And let's look over here, Maps 3D, and let's go and let's enable these. So we can enable that. We can put in our Maps SDK, statics, places, geocoding, and places API as well. We can enable routes API. We can also add that, and address validation. And let's make sure that we've got our SDK on for Android. can add in our JavaScript API as well. And for iOS, we're not really going to use the 3D SDK, but for this, we're just going to make sure that we have all the correct items on and enabled, and then it'll be able to pull through. So you can see now that we have one less item here because we've added through our Maps SDK, or sorry, our Maps API. So you can see we're still getting the Maps error. So what we're going to do is we're quickly going to copy this and we're going to go to create a web app. And you guys won't need to do this properly on your side, but we're just going to use this for reference. I'm going to duplicate this tab and I'm just going to open the mobile app. And here I'm just going to copy special, copy with workflows, go onto the side and say paste with workflows, and we can add that there. Now we need to make sure that we're pulling through this state. So group destinations, locations, perfect. And let's quickly go and preview this. So this is how it will come through in our items there. And now you can see that the map is working. Just on our mobile view, it doesn't render correctly. So now we need to go and make sure that we've set up our pricing correctly. So we're going to open up this item. And if you can remember, we've used map A's current marker's distance from input start location. So we need to set the end marker of this map. So when we created that workflow earlier, that will set the price of this. We're going to add in one more element here on location set, and that is going to be, we're going to type map, and we're going to say set current map marker for a map. And this is going to be input drop off locations value. So now that's going to set the item on the map. So we can go and preview this in our mobile editor, and here I'm going to type Cape Town, and let's see if we can add in C point. Okay, so it's gone in the wrong country. We put C point Cape Town, and you can see that the pricing has come through a lot better. So this map is not displaying, but you can see that it's pulling through the correct items to create this pricing, and you can see that our Uber XL is a little bit cheaper as well. So what we forgot to add here would be, before this text, is we just need to, we click at the start, and then we're just going to add in a $, and let's refresh this, and you're going to say Cape Town, and then I'm just going to add in another province. You can see that that's from one province to another, but you can see we have now our price, which would be a very expensive Uber. Let's maybe do it somewhere. So you can see that if we went from Cape Town to Camps Bay, it would be $98 and then $147 in an Uber X. Okay, cool. So now we have the basic setup for our items. And now this next one, we're going to set up the actual trip request and then how that will process on the user side as well as going to the driver side.
And just like that, unfortunately, that's all we have time to include within this video today. As you can see, we've been building for literally hours and there's still so many features that we need to cover. If you wanted to get access to the entire course, I'd always recommend hitting the link in the description of this video so that way you can check it out on our website. Now look, while that full course is going to cost you money, it's definitely going to save you months of your life having to learn how to rebuild all of the key features of Uber by yourself. So if you're looking to build and launch your app as quickly as possible, I definitely recommend checking it out. If you also wanted to stay up to date with any additional Bubble resources we share, I'd always recommend hitting that subscribe button on our channel so that way you can be the first to know whenever we drop a new video. But for now, I just wanted to say a massive thank you for taking the time to watch this specific tutorial, and I wish you all of the best on your own no-code journey.